This poor high schooler is Truck-kun's latest victim, and when he wakes up, he finds himself in an isekai world. But what he doesn't know is that he has a hidden trait that makes him immortal. The story begins in a medieval isekai world, where a high schooler named Ryo can be seen lying down inside an empty cottage. The cottage has no furniture inside, except for only 2 books and a knife left on the table. Ryo gets up, ignores these 3 items, and goes outside to get some fresh air. He looks around and sees nothing but tall mountains everywhere. He then looks at his hands and chants the spell, "Water, come forth," prompting a small body of water to appear magically and splash in his hand. It all begins a few days ago, when Ryo suddenly finds himself in a white, empty void. As he starts to wonder where he is, the angel hosting this realm appears and, reading his thoughts, assures him that this realm is not the afterlife. The angel expresses how glad he is to finally have a visitor after years, but at the same time shows grievance because Ryo has just passed away in his home world after getting hit by Truck-kun. Ryo is already aware of that, and he also figures that he's about to be reincarnated. So he asks the angel, naming him Angel Michael in his head, what he should do in his next life. Michael advises him to live however he wants to. Ryo has always wanted to live a slow and boring life, and after getting Michael's approval, he gets ready to be reincarnated into the world full of magic known as Phi. Before letting him go, Michael tells Ryo more about the world of Phi. According to Michael, only 20% of the world's population knows how to use magic, and in Ryo's case, he can also use magic and is most compatible with the water element. Since he requested a slow, boring life, Michael transports him to the forest of Rondo to live alone in a small cottage. Michael has already arranged 2 months' worth of food in a small ice house. Inside the cottage, he has also left 2 books that can help Ryo learn both about the world and how to use magic. And only after reading the book does Ryo learn how to summon a small body of water out of nowhere. For now, he doesn't need to worry about being harmed by the forest's monsters, because Michael has created a barrier around the house. Ryo once again practices using water magic and is able to create a water ball just by imagining it, discovering that he no longer needs to chant the spell out loud. Pretty convenient for the main character. Using his magic, Ryo then fills the bathtub with fresh water, which I think is gross because the water is technically coming from his insides. The water in the bathtub is super cold, so he must now find a way to heat it up. He gets ready to light a fire using, of course, the most ancient, inefficient technique known to mankind. After failing to light a spark after several attempts, he gives up and wonders if there's a way to work around this with magic. Putting his previous life's chemistry lessons to good use, Ryo separates hydrogen from oxygen, which causes the water to crystallize and turn into ice. Now that he has ice, he uses it as a medium to condense the sun's rays, using it like a magnifying glass, and manages to unlock fire. With that fire, Ryo finally unlocks hot water and takes a slow, long bath. His thoughts clear up, and with his mind refreshed, he realizes that he can just make hot water using magic by applying the same technique in reverse that he used to make ice. But that's for later. For now, he goes to eat dinner. While eating, he realizes he must start hunting soon as his food supply will run out. But he hesitates because if he goes out into the forest, he's surely going to encounter monsters, which he believes he cannot defeat with that small knife Michael left him. This means he will now have to unlock offensive magic as well. The next day, Ryo works on his first attack spell, Water Ball, but it doesn't deal any damage to the target tree, so he modifies the spell, narrowing the ball into the size of an arrow. Only after hours of practice does he manage to unlock the most basic form of the Water Jet spell, which, to be fair, still doesn't deal any damage to the target tree. The following day, he works on improving his ice magic since his water magic hasn't shown any signs of effectiveness in battle. He carefully creates an ice crystal but fails to levitate it because projecting ice is not as easy as water. Still, after several hours of practice, Ryo manages to summon several ice crystals at once, but still fails to launch them at the tree. After several days of trial and error, he becomes skilled enough to at least form ice crystals in an instant, but he still doesn't possess enough power to use them as projectiles. Regardless, because time is running out, Ryo works around it, using the ice crystal as a spearhead and venturing into the forest. Near a riverbank, he finds some quartz and is glad because he can now use it to light a fire in case he depletes all his mana. He then goes to collect some medicinal herbs when a monster named Lesser Boar targets him as an easy kill. The boar charges straight at him, but out of fear, Ryo fails to move his feet, which almost ends his isekai journey right then and there. But at the very last second, the thought of dying again helps him jump away. This time, he uses magic to his advantage, making the ground slippery by turning it into ice, causing the boar to slip. He then quickly makes several icicles appear before the boar, and the boar ends up getting pierced to its demise. The adage, "desperate times call for desperate measures," suits him so well, because see him pull off water magic in the heat of the moment. Well, it was a great attempt, but he's still nowhere close to being good. He goes home and immediately learns about monsters in the Monster Compendium, and it doesn't take him long to realize that lesser boars are the weakest of all monsters. He takes his time to read through the book to learn about other creatures he might encounter, because maybe his slow life isn't actually slow. He reads the page that talks about dragons, and all the book can tell him is that when he sees a dragon, he should run. It's not like he can outrun it. He'll still die, but he should still make an attempt to run. He flips to the next page that talks about an Akuna. For this monster, he doesn't even have to run. He just has to pray he doesn't encounter it. The book doesn't seem to help him much, but he keeps reading. You'd assume he'd be discouraged by his last hunting encounter, but a boy can't stay indoors forever. Hence, the following day, he prepares himself and goes outside again. The day starts on a good note as he finds a tree with fruits. When he takes the first bite, it truly makes up for all the stress he went through the previous day. It tastes so good. Well, it brings him another stage of stress as an assassin hawk flies toward him and knocks him down. He sees that the hawk is stronger than he is, and there's no way he can conquer it. The hawk uses air magic that is invisible, so there's no way he can fight back. He remembers the idea from the book and runs, but how will he outrun a bird? Seeing he's trapped, he stops to fight. He uses his ice magic to trap the hawk. When he assumes the hawk is dead, he goes closer to it, but the hawk breaks through the ice, though one of its eyes is injured. When the hawk realizes he's stronger than before, it runs off. He sighs in relief and collapses to the ground, complaining that the slow life he asked for isn't actually slow. He tries to find his way back home but realizes he's lost after running from the hawk. As he navigates the forest, he sees something that scares him, a Dullahan. It has no head, and smoke pours from its neck. The Dullahan is tending to its horse. One way or another, he finds his way back home. As time goes on, he trains to get better. From fighting several monsters to fishing, he upgrades his ice magic so much that his ice can now cut through a mountain. He keeps trying to get stronger, and at this point, he's getting a hang of his new life. However, every night he returns to the place where he found the Dullahan to fight it. Not because he wants to win, but maybe because it makes him stronger. He doesn't know much about Dullahans, because there's nothing about them in the Monster Compendium he's reading. So it's either the Dullahan isn't a monster, or it's not in the beginner's book. After another failed fight, he admits that the only reason he keeps coming back is because he feels the Dullahan wants to make him stronger. He watches as the Dullahan makes an ice sword. The Dullahan holds the sword toward him, and he takes the hint that it wants him to have it. After he accepts the sword, the creature leaves peacefully. The next few days, or maybe weeks, are calm for Ryo. Well, until he encounters the revengeful hawk again. On that fateful day, he's training as usual when he sees the hawk in front of him. He notices it's missing an eye, so he immediately knows it's the same one he fought before. However, the hawk wasn't black before, but now it is. It also looks bigger, which means it has evolved. The hawk comes at him with so much strength that Ryo evokes his 5-layer ice wall, but the hawk breaks through it without stress. He invokes the 10-layer wall, and the hawk breaks that too. When he uses his ice lancer, the hawk flies right through it to attack him. The stick he uses for support falls, and in the heat of the moment, he picks up the sword he got from the Dullahan and attacks the hawk. The sword works. The hawk falls back, then comes at him again with full force, but he uses the sword to pierce it, and it falls. He walks up to the hawk, admitting that the creature is quite determined. Well, he had taken its eye again, and he knows the hawk wanted to fight back. However, for him, fighting the hawk has made him stronger, so he has the hawk to thank for that. He also admits that the hawk evolved just to fight him, so he gives it a moment of honor by letting it die by his hand. He removes his sword, and the hawk dies. He continues his journey, unaware that a dragon is nearby. The dragon comes up to him and speaks. He's shocked that he can hear a dragon's voice. The dragon is also glad that he can use his telepathy again. He asks Ryo if he's seen an evolved hawk, and Ryo says he killed it. The dragon wonders how Ryo could have the power to do that, so Ryo shows him the sword. The dragon recognizes it as the sword of the Fairy King and asks what Ryo did to the Fairy King to receive such a gift. But Ryo doesn't know either. Since he's done with his questions for Ryo, Ryo also asks him a few questions. They talk until it's late, before the dragon says he has to leave. Before leaving, Ryo introduces himself, and the dragon says his name is Lewin. Ryo is literally having a swell time in his new life. So much so that the angel who reincarnated him checks his slab again and realizes he missed something important. Ryo has a hidden feature in this new world that the angel didn't notice because the last person he sent there didn't have the same power. It's the power of eternal youth. How will Ryo use this power? What does this mean for him? By the riverbank, a strange boy with a red hair lays on the sand. Who is he? Ryo, on his early morning hunt to the seashore to collect some seafood, stumbles upon a shipwreck, completing his Robinson Crusoe arc. He sees a man's body beside the boat, and, after checking his pulse, realizes that his soul has permanently despawned from this world. Ryo then notices another man named Abel on the other side of the wrecked boat, and, thankfully, this guy is alive and breathing. A bit of backstory. Abel and a few other people were on a journey by this boat when a crazy thunderstorm erupted out of nowhere. In the midst of the thunderstorm, a titan octopus attacked their boat, causing everyone to drown as the boat broke into two pieces. Thankfully, the incident happened nearby, and that's how they washed ashore here. Currently, Ryo has brought Abel, who's still unconscious, to his house and goes out to do some household chores. In the meantime, Abel awakens and wonders where he is. He walks out of the house to find a literal flower garden and a stone path in the middle leading to the forest, all made by Ryo. Ryo shows up, expressing how glad he is to learn that Abel is okay, even though he doesn't know who this guy even is. Abel, on the other hand, is shocked because he didn't sense Ryo's presence at all. Does this mean he has a skill that allows him to scan his surroundings? In any case, what bothers Abel the most is Ryo's die-hard Robinson Crusoe roleplay. He wants to ask Ryo if he's a hillbilly who doesn't have any clothes, but then stops himself as he doesn't want to leave a bad impression on their first interaction. So, he politely introduces himself, expressing his gratitude and thanking Ryo, assuming he saved his life. Ryo, in reply, states that he doesn't deserve any praise at all, since the only thing he did was carry him to his home. That said, Ryo becomes serious, breaking the bad news that all of the others have passed away. Abel tells Ryo not to feel bad for them, revealing that everyone else on his boat were smugglers. As he's about to go into details, his stomach growls, so Ryo suggests they continue this topic while having lunch together. Now that they are acquainted, Abel asks Ryo if he has no set of clothes, and Ryo casually explains that he can't make any because he doesn't have the materials like thread or cloth needed to do so. Abel, in response, argues that Ryo can just go buy some clothes from any nearby town, but then instantly realizes that Ryo must not have any money with him since he's living the life of an exiled saint. Abel, of course, doesn't know where they are and is only assuming there are towns nearby. So, Ryo explains the situation to him, informing him that there aren't any towns nearby, and that's why he's been forced to live like this. Abel asks Ryo how he manages to gather food and stuff, and becomes absolutely astounded when Ryo reveals that he is a water magician. Abel is impressed because, from what he knows, only 50% of people in the central province know how to use magic. This upsets Ryo, as he thought he was a bit more special, since the angel Michael informed him that only 20% could do so. In any case, Abel wants to check something, so he requests Ryo to bring him back to the shipwreck again. When they reach the coast, they surprisingly find no bodies there, and Ryo assumes that the bodies were washed away by the sea or eaten by some monsters. This just means if Ryo hadn't saved Abel's life, Abel would have been eaten as well. So Abel owes it even more to Rio for saving his life, and states that even though they are strangers, Rio is a true friend. Anyway, Abel searches the shipwreck but fails to find the thing he came here for, so he makes changes to his plans, deciding to meet up with his friends at the town of Loon, which he assumes is to their north. He invites Rio to join him on his journey, stating he needs a guide since he doesn't know where Loon is. Rio has no idea himself, but still agrees to be Abel's guide, and states that they can commence their journey tomorrow, as he needs some time to prepare for everything. Abel accepts and shakes hands on this deal. Later in the evening, Rio bids goodbye to his Stardew Valley life, and then goes out into the forest to also say farewell to Dullahan, the mythical creature that trained him. Rio tells Dullahan about his plans to leave tomorrow, but promises that one day he will return. He expresses how grateful he is to Dullahan for all the things he has done for him, and decides to spar one last time with his guru. They go all out, and after a long, heated battle, Dullahan is unsurprisingly the one standing. Now that it is time to depart, Dullahan gives Rio a farewell gift, a proper main character outfit for this homeless loser. The next morning, Rio, now in his new outfit, begins his journey with Abel to the north, leaving behind his medieval solo life. On their way, they encounter a wild boar, and Abel steps up to deal with the situation. Although he can't use magic, he uses a sword skill to enhance his movement and impales the boar, slaying it with a single strike. The forest seems never-ending, and they have to set up camp that night beneath a large tree. They continue their journey the next morning and arrive near a pond, where they notice a lizard-man couple having a private moment together in the distant water. Abel doesn't want to pick a fight with them, stating that lizard-men are quite strong, so they take a detour to the left. However, Rio, using his detection skill, senses some creatures running toward them and suspects that the lizard-men may have noticed their presence. Abel tells Rio to stay behind him, but Rio refuses, as he senses many enemies approaching. Abel doesn't think Rio's magic will be of any use without a magic staff, but to Abel's surprise, Rio doesn't need one. He doesn't even need to chant any spells. In an instant, he summons several ice crystals and launches them at 4 approaching lizard-men, taking them all out immediately. Within a few seconds, the entire fight, which the proud Abel couldn't end, ends easily. After Rio finishes defeating the monsters, Abel asks him what he just used because he hasn't seen that before. Rio doesn't think it is that special. All he used was a water lancer. He tells Abel it isn't special, but Abel feels otherwise, especially because he saw that Rio had invoked 4 lancers at the same time, contrary to his previous knowledge that mages can only invoke 1 magic at a time. He tells Rio he is concerned, and Rio indeed comments that he is ignorant of that fact. He tries to divert the entire conversation, but Abel insists that it works that way for the wind mages he knows. So Rio reminds him that he is a water maid. Before they continue their journey, Rio does an incantation and brings out water to drink. He reminds Abel that they are exhausted and they have a long day ahead, so they should drink water. Abel takes it, but he remains worried about something again. The incantations that Rio had done to invoke the water are quite different from the ones he is used to, but Rio doesn't give him an audience. They continue their journey, and as they get nearer to Luna, Abel gives Rio a coin that could be spent at Luna. Rio is so excited. That is the first time he has held money since he got to that world. Seeing his excitement, Abel explains to him that there are several other currencies like that, and the currency is that of the Kingdom of Nightly, a kingdom that Luna is a member of. He further tells him that there are 3 cities in that kingdom: Luna, Handalyo Federation, and Debuhi Empire. Immediately Abel mentions Debuhi. Rio pauses, which makes him wonder if Rio had an interaction with the city before. He asks Rio, who says no. Rio was taken aback because of the name of the city. He feels the name doesn't sound good, and it wouldn't be good if he were a member of that city and introducing himself with that name. Good for him, because he is indeed not a member of that city. They continue their walk and make jest about this. They walk past some rocks and Abel notices that a rock is moving. He attacks the rock and Rio joins in too, but realizes that they have entered into a rock golem nest. The rock keeps gathering itself, and Abel runs to stab it, but it regenerates. Seeing that Abel's sword isn't doing anything, Ryo invokes a 10-layer ice rock and hits it on 2 of the rocks. It overpowers the rocks, so he proceeds to do the same for the other ones. When they get to the last one, he sees that the rock isn't moving. He realizes that it is because it is lying on its back. They get their power from the floor, and if they are lying on their back, they have no power. They also see a magic core under their feet, and Abel recognizes that the rocks must have killed several monsters, so the cores are great. They decide to take it as their tour spoil, and Ryo considers going to take from the other golems, but notices that the golems are fighting the ice rocks, so they excuse themselves. They walk further and see another monster. Ryo assumes it is just a frog, but Abel thinks it is a behemoth. Life doesn't even give them enough time to argue about what it really is, as they see several wyverns flying there too. They are in the middle of a war zone, but they are also lucky. Since the behemoth is also a victim in that fight, they are sure it won't let the wyverns defeat it. They turn out to be right, as the behemoth fights back with magic and wins. Ryo is excited about the things he has encountered so far. That night, they set a fire and they talk. Ryo teases Abel that he had thought Abel would fight the behemoth too, and he would watch a round 2 of the fight. This boy is really wicked, but it is just a joke. They talk about the magic negation that the behemoth had used to fight, and Abel says he had only seen it as a trap in dungeons. The idea of a dungeon excites Ryo, and when Abel notices, he asks him if he is interested in a dungeon, and he says yes. Well, he is so lucky because the only dungeon in the entire kingdom is at Luna, and that is the city they are going to. Ryo teases that Abel had kept that a secret from him and didn't tell him from the beginning, but Abel insists that he didn't know Ryo was interested in dungeons in the first place. When Ryo insists on knowing the other things that Abel could be hiding from him, Abel asks him if he has seen dwarves and elves before, because he is indeed in luck. There are several dwarves at Luna, and they are quite strong. When he says this, Ryo says he knows that already, and Abel wonders how he knew. He also says there is just an elf in Luna, and Ryo insists he is familiar with that information too. They continue their journey into the mountain, and Ryo informs Abel that after they cross that hill, they will find a human community. Abel doesn't expect Ryo to know this information, so he asks Ryo again. Ryo remembers that it was the dragon that told him when they were talking, but he also knows there is no way he could explain that to Abel and he would believe, so he tells Abel to forget about it. As they continue their journey, a high-grade monster threatens them. When Abel feels its presence, he prepares to fight, but when he sees the mighty mountain in front of him, he gets so scared that he doesn't bother fighting, and he has difficulty breathing. Luckily, Ryo calls his attention and throws meat at the monster. After the bird swallows the meat, it leaves them. Abel sighs in joy that it is all over. He is glad that Ryo could cover up for him. They continue their journey and wonder what is wrong with that area. The monsters they have seen there aren't monsters that humans should be fighting. There is something wrong in that hill. They remember that the wyverns had always flown from the north, so they assume that they are around the North Mountain. They peep towards the side of the hill and see several wyverns eating the carcass of another monster. They realize that they are right. Abel plans that they shouldn't fight, but Ryo thinks otherwise. He thinks they should fight, and if they are fighting, it is best they fight now that the wyverns are on the ground. They go to fight and win, but they are confronted with several other wyverns flying towards them. Ryo uses his magic to kill them from the sky. Abel goes for their gem. Abel is already excited about the fight, so when several other monsters come, he is so happy. By the time they are done with the fight, they look at themselves and smile. It is a great partnership. Let's see how the partnership will end.